Draft science video comments again. I guess it's always it's helpful just because you hear these counter arguments and you're saying, yeah, this is what you have to argue with. And the only way to, I suppose, eventually I'll just have to put all the unanswered questions in one video and just label them by how many times the question's been asked and there's been no answer, and yet these people claim they have some sort of, they have reason to call somebody an idiot for not accepting their evolution theory, when their evolution theory is full of angels and, invisible men. It's an invisible force theory. Every single one of the forces is invisible, mannish. It's some homunculus. Okay, it's like the understanding the brain by just saying, oh, there's a me controlling it with little levers. And it's the same sort of bullshit. They're not answering the question, how does the universe work? Well, the geometry is in control. The mathematics is running it. There's no, it's got a whole infrastructure, that's holding the physics up. Physics isn't answering the question of cause and effect, how it happens. Physics is just talking about, I had lunch today and, it was very tasty. There's no answers here. This isn't a science anymore. It's a faith. Anyway, it's more than that. It's a dependency. All right. So I noticed this comment as a response. So it was in a chain of comments, but it's just such this bullshit rhetoric. So the Gary Koch guy. First of all, every other alternative unification theory out there. All right, now I wish somebody would cite some of these that are actual unification theories. I mean, Ken Wheeler certainly isn't having things a unification theory. I would even argue the Thunderbolts guys, there's nothing unifying in the sense they don't explain anything. There's no mechanism for anything. It's just everybody just goes electrical. I mean, that's not an answer. So, but if you want to point me to somebody who has a real unification theory, I'd love to see it. I don't. So you're saying there's a bunch of alternate unification theories. I can't find any. So why don't you give me some links to those, please? I mean, it's a huge plus if your theory actually unifies. I'm just saying, if somebody out there has a theory that actually unifies all the forces, I think everybody should pay attention, because that would be a pretty good winning argument to make in an argument about why your theory's right, if it actually unifies. So why don't you show me, okay, these other theories, and then contrast mine to theirs and show how mine is just as bad or just as empty or just as vague, because it won't be. So anyway, is also refuted out there. Is also, first of all, every other alternate unification theory out there is also unrefuted. So again, you're arguing that they haven't been refuted by pointing out how it's not a unification theory, or it has absolutely no cognitive mechanism. It's useless as a unification theory because it doesn't say anything. It says hyperboloid. Yeah, well, that's not a unification theory. That's a vacuous or empty bag of words. Just like my leprechaun on the moon hypothesis. Okay, so this is the irony. My hypothesis is exactly the opposite of a leprechaun, in the sense that it doesn't have any other moving parts. It's the simplest mechanism you can get. It's boiled it down to frickin' black and red checkers on a black and red checkerboard. You can't get any more basic. Unleprechaunish. No fancy infrastructure, no hidden parts, no invisible anything like leprechauns. And you have, let's go through the list. Bent space, okay, Heisenberg, Huygens, dark matter, virtual photons. Okay, just those is enough, right? And I could go into all the interpretations like Copenhagen, the multiverse, many worlds. And you have you're so up your own ass that you'll sit there and point to somebody else and say, leprechaun theorist? When those are your answers for every force that exists? That's what you provide? Nothing. Somebody else did it. The field did it. The magic field of leprechaunia did it. The completely unrefutable, magical, inaccessible place did it. And you don't see how that's a leprechaun theory. You honestly don't understand how that could be seen by a rational person as exactly saying the same thing as the Invisible Man did it. You honestly don't see that. Alright, anyway. I find it hard to believe that you are this stupid. I find it hard to believe that you could have any intellectual integrity whatsoever and make the accusation that I am the one proposing the leprechaun theory, defending the leprechaun theory, when my theory is explicit, simple, and mechanical, and your theory is the one completely dependent on unseen probability waves. I mean, it's just such insanely back-ass word. Alright. It's hard to believe you are this stupid. To misunderstand burden of proof. So again, you think in a fair trial, if we could go back to 1919, I couldn't win the argument. Or 1915. So this is just about, this isn't a burden of proof. This is a burden of disproof. I have to disprove your theory because you won't let go of it otherwise. Doesn't matter how good the evidence of evolution is, because you're just glued to this fable of your bent space tra-la. And that's all that's happening here. You don't understand the burden of proof, because I've met the burdens of proof. Fitting the evidence. That's the burden here. What other burden do you think exists besides creating a theory that fits the evidence, that fits what happens when you start burning things or stepping on them or pushing them around? And that's exactly what my theory does, and it does it in such depth compared to your theory. I don't need virtual photons, I don't need Heisenberg, I don't need Huygens, I don't need any magical fake thing to make it work. Man. Anyway. Let's see. Burden of proof so horribly. So again, he really thinks there's some burden of proof beyond fitting the evidence. Fitting the experimental evidence. And obviously unifying, which your theory doesn't do, and my theory does. Amazing. Just amazing. You're either a troll, like I stated before, or just extremely moronic. Well, again, will you properly eat these words in the future? I'm just saying, what's going to be your penance when you're proven wrong? I mean, how will you demonstrate proper humility for the harm you did with your rhetoric? Maybe both. I also find it hard to believe that Emendum is seriously asking what other evidence he needs to provide beyond drawings. Well, yeah, drawings that explain magnetism. You show me your drawing. Show me your explanation of magnetism, why don't you? Why don't you show me, give me a link to your best explanation of how two magnets attract and then two magnets repel. See if you can come up with a drawing, please, of the mechanism. I'd like to see that. Go ahead, give it your best shot. Because you're not going to come up with anything as rational as my drawing, fucker. I defy you. You know, you arrogant cunt. Anyway. Let's see. Maybe both. I also find out that the end of a series of evidence needs to provide beyond drawings assertion. So again, this assertion part. I don't make empty assertions, idiot. What I say is, hey, look at this. It fits the evidence. That's the assertion, shithead. That's not exactly saying, just trust me. I did the experiment in secret and just trust me. There's nothing like that. I'm giving you I'm showing you exactly how it functions. You either see that, yes, that would work, or you don't see it. But I mean, it's quite obvious that it works. Shit. The puzzle pieces fit together. I mean, you're the one saying they don't when they quite obviously do. Damn. I mean, you know, you're just never going to, I guess you just can't, you know, I thought this would be persuasive to people to just think about what happened in physics, and that there was a huge force taken off the table when Einstein put gravity into this bent space area. Because now you couldn't do anything with the force that was actually causing gravity. So the actual force that was causing gravity was just thrown out of physics in a sense. It was blocked off in a little section. And the truth is that force is the same force. And you can just see how, yeah, it fits. They all move the speed of light. Why do they all have the same speed? You can't get that? I mean, it just fits. And they all have this, they all have the straight line thing. Dead straight lines they move in. You can't see how, yeah, maybe you could just make one little mistake, and that mistake just walled off something that has this potential to fit into all the other stuff, to explain why electrons move and protons. And you can't even see the fact that combining, in a real sense, the idea of charge with the idea, because of attraction and repulsion, and the idea of what a magnet's doing, and figuring out how, oh yeah, that's the same force. They really don't deserve different names because it's the same little mechanisms that are pushing them. You can't see that? How it's possible to make just two little mistakes in terms of definition, and you lose the vision to see how it all fits into one package of force? That they're all one thing? Man. I just, and you're telling me you can't see that, and you're saying you're an honest man. You're an honest man, and you can't see how, yeah, that's really possible. You know, that they just made a mistake when they took all that energy of gravity and just said, we won't use that anywhere else in the universe. It doesn't go anywhere. When we know that energy's constantly in motion, and that it all goes somewhere else. It never doesn't go anywhere. The flame coming out of the shuttle keeps moving. The energy, the vibrations, the movement, it keeps going forever. You can't see that, and the same is true for gravity. The force moving the earth is going to move other things too. Damn. And you're telling me you're an honest man. Just doing your honest job of slandering somebody who's a better thinker than you. Yeah, that's your job here. Man. Alright. Seriously, there's evidence he needs to provide beyond drawings, assertions, and YouTube videos. So again, degrading the idea of what do you think lectures on are? So you really think that if you recorded Einstein in you know, the 20s, it would be useless rubbish. Wouldn't have any value. Einstein talking. But you don't think the Feynman videos of Feynman talking about this stuff has no value? Not insightful, not meaningful to thought on the subject of physics. I mean, what kind of crap remark is that? Like it's trivial. Amazing. Does he understand science at all? Well, again, and you think you do. You think you're the one who understands what it is to be a thinking person, and what it is to be careful and responsible and diligent. You don't have any of those qualities. You're a reckless, bigoted troll. Totally mind-boggling. Well, again, you know, I'm just pointing out, I'm defending my boggle at your preposterous overstatements, your insane exaggerations. And I'm saying to anyone listening who might think these people have some point to make. Do you see how desperate these arguments are? Instead of actually dealing with any concept I've argued, instead of expecting them to defend their magical, invisible leprechaun forces, we're sitting there arguing about whether I have a right to defend a theory and that somehow my defense hasn't been perfectly sensible to the idea of if you did happen to discover a unification theory, this would be exactly what you would do with the information, is develop it and argue it. And what do you get for that? Slandered by people who can't defeat your argument in some honest way, so they have to resort to these preposterous exaggerations because they can't make an honest argument. I mean, I can sit there and show the lensing images again. This guy's going to say it's good evidence, and I can just say, how can you defend it as good evidence? How can you explain lensing gravity 10 diameters away from the object supposed to be producing the gravity? It would mean that the surface gravity of that object would have to be an insanely Black Holeian style gravity. You understand? It doesn't make any sense. How can you say it's great evidence when it's so nonsensical? Alright, second, we've been over all this stuff a million times. Well, again, this argument that you somehow have made an argument where I'm sitting here pleading for you to make one. I mean, you're just such holiday liars. You haven't made any argument. You haven't asked any questions I've left unanswered. You're just keep saying that somehow you've done something. You've provided this big hard proof when you haven't done it. Months and months ago, Mr. McDimwit, so the gratuitous whatever extras, the experiment is kind of a big deal. The experiment was kind of a big deal, so I guess he's going back over Michelson-Morley. One of the biggest null results ever. So this is his understanding of what's an important experiment. So first I've pointed out how all of these beam splitter experiments have a little bit of a liability in the sense that the two beams aren't equal. One is diverged, is diffracted in the beginning of the path, and one is diffracted at the last step of the path, which is a big difference. And these people's interpretations of what the experiment, see, they say a phase difference means that something had to happen because they still think you have to believe waves happen between two objects and there is no physical thing. So if I argue that phase shift, redshift, could only happen when light is emitted or when light is received, that it can't happen in between the things. Okay, see, they can't understand that. So they think a phase difference means a length difference. They think it has to be a longer distance if you see it different. And so it had to go faster. It had to go the same distance at a faster speed somehow. And that's not my argument. So this is just all a straw man because of what they say the physical universe is. So this is their straw man. They defeat your argument by forcing your argument to have their ghosts in it. And then you point out how, but wait a minute, there's no ghost in my theory. And then they say, well, there, it's invalidated. It doesn't have the fundamental thing that was, the ghost was carrying the magic wand. And without the magic wand, you have no theory. I mean, it's that straw man. It's just, I must put their nonsense in my theory so it can carry something that I'm saying doesn't need to be carried by any character. It's just lying there. I don't need something to carry it. I don't need a ghost to carry it. Anyway, I'm trying to come up with a metaphor, but that's all it is. It's straw man argument. Anyway, one of the biggest null results ever. It shows that the speed of light is constant regardless of the speed of the observer. So that's what you say. And I would argue that that's nonsense when you're just using phase shift as the evidence, because you don't understand that phase shift doesn't happen between objects by stretching space or distance. You can't change the phase of photons by moving things. Okay, The only way you can change the frequency of light is when you're moving, the frequency is going to be tighter forward, and when you're moving backwards, the frequency is going to be longer because of how you're depositing the light. That changes its phase and its frequency. I mean, changing frequency is the same as obviously changing phase. Let's see, one of the biggest no results ever. I mean, it's no coincidence that Michelson went on to do a lot of work with phase shift, because that's probably what he was observing doing the interferometer experiments, is that phase shift is the more interesting phenomenon. Anyway, it shows that the speed of light is constant regardless of the speed of the observer, which Einstein later used to postulate special relativity. So again, they're still using semantics to screw with this argument. Again, I have to accept their stretchy space theory as the way you measure distance. And I can't do it by the simple argument that the light always travels the same amount of distance in the same amount of time. And if two objects are moving towards each other, the truth is they have less distance to cover. And that's the simple truth. The photons don't have to go as far, so yes, they get there faster because there's less distance to travel. It's not that complicated. If they're moving away from each other, there's more distance to travel. The light doesn't change speed. The observer's perception of time changes because of their metabolism problem, but again, that has nothing to do with what actually happens in the universe. Alright. Eminem claims that this is not the case. I claim that, yes, stretching space doesn't have any effect, okay, on a photon. You can't stretch photons after they're released. You either admit them, you're either moving with a machine gun, therefore the bullets will appear to come out faster because they're not moving faster, they'll appear to come out faster because you're moving towards something, so the frequency will be quicker. And if they're moving away, the frequency will be slower. But it won't change the speed of the bullets. Amazing. I mean, obviously it's not a perfect analogy because in the physical world you can add speed to bullets, but we're saying the speed of light is constant. So with light, you can't move this flashlight and make the light go faster by moving it. That's the simple argument, and we agree on that. And you're pretending I'm saying something else when I'm not, and I'm saying it explicitly. I'm not. And you keep trying to imply that I'm the one saying the speed of light changes. You're the one saying that a photon goes into a gravity well and somehow spends twice as much time in there than the time we measure. That somehow it goes in and it comes out twice as long as it should have. But we don't see it on our clock. We're sitting there as the outside observer watching the photon. The photon goes into the gravity well, photon comes out, and somehow it was in there twice as long as our watch says it was. That's your theory. Which Einstein later used, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Eminem claims that it's not the case, that there would be light speed plus the speed of the Earth, etc. So that's just a blatant lie. I should block you right now for that. It's a grotesque lie. Again, I guess I'll say too, unless you're going to quote me, you better not mention a single goddamn thing I argue. Because that's such a misparaphrase. No excuse for that whatsoever. And men, listen to this. I mean, after all these videos, there must be close to 500 videos now. And this lying piece of shit could say something this fucking stupid when I've made a deliberate effort to say over and over again, you can't give light any extra speeds in any direction. The direction it's going, or sideways, or any other way. And over again I've emphasized that. Aggressively emphasized it. And this lying piece of shit will say something like this. And so you're saying, like I said, These people are claiming to be just honest protectors of science and the truth. And here they overtly, aggressively lie about what you've said and what you're proposing. I mean, this is an aggressive lie because I've said it so many fucking times exactly the opposite. Inmendum claims that this is not the case, that there would be light speed plus the speed of the earth, etc. So again, never have I said that. Ever. 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 Anything like that. Not even close to anything like that. You lying piece of fucking shit. Which has been demonstrated false in this experiment and so many more since. So again, if that isn't a straw man, what the fuck is it? Right? I mean, he's too stupid to understand that when you argue that when you shoot a something perpendicular to your speed, you're not adding speed this way, idiot. The argument isn't the speed of light plus. You're the one saying it does this kind of thing. I'm just saying you can't make light go two ways. Photons don't add velocities. They don't do the thing matter does. They're not baseballs. That's what I've said overtly. They can't combine speeds, idiot. So you're not even understanding the experiment me and Piro talked about versus Michelson-Morley, because they're not the same experiment, idiot. One of them is shooting things this way and seeing if you can add speed or subtract speed from a forward motion. The other experiment has to do with the fact that you're moving this way. And will this thing shoot light forward and land in the future instead of going straight? Will photons move in a straight line is the argument. I'm defending the straight line theory. Jeez, what a fucking liar. Anyway. I mean, you're going to have to retract that lie with an apology or I'm blocking you for sure. That's just, I shouldn't have to respond to something shit like that. You can just talk shit like that. Say something that fucking goddamn inaccurate. And then sit there and claim you have credibility and people should listen to you and you need to have your right to speak and lie about me. You don't have a right to lie about me, fucker. So, Piro even suggested an experiment that he could do to prove this himself. So again, you don't even understand the experiment. The experiment has to do with motion this way, shithead. Not adding this speed plus more speed. I don't know, I guess you can't figure out that you're the one saying that with this sideways motion that the photon moves this way plus this way. You're so fucking stupid that you don't even understand that Piro's the one suggesting the photon moves with both velocities, that it carries both vectors. You're the one saying that. I'm the one saying photons are independent agents and they don't care about the emitter. And that's fundamentally what Einstein said, but of course, because language isn't perfect, it was misinterpreted to come out to be something else. But he basically was saying what I'm saying, which is photons are free agents. You deposit them into the universe. And they don't carry whatever you were doing, they're not doing that. They're doing one thing. They're moving the speed of light in a direction. Period. Fuck. I mean, listen, endless excuses for why he wouldn't do that. Okay, so again, this is your being an honest man. I point out how, well, guess what? My laser is diffracting this much. And I have to find a difference of less than, 2 millimeters in this much noise. And you don't understand the argument. That you really can't measure something that started off this small and is now this big and say, I'm going to find the difference in that much noise. You can't understand how that's a valid argument. That it would be a little bit silly to look for 2 millimeter difference in this in the focus of the beam, the light not diffracted, when 90% of the light's diffracted. You can't understand how that's a valid argument. It kind of takes your steam out of doing the experiment because, fuck, what hope is there? Oh, that's right, no hope. So anyway, and again, you don't even understand the physics of doing the experiment. I don't happen to have an empty field somewhere where I can just shoot lasers across and it's no problem. I have to shoot across other people's properties, and it's a little bit, it's a little more complicated than you might think to go find 500 or 600 feet to be playing laser experiments on. You know, where you can keep the laser out of the weather and such. Well, anyway, there's no point in explaining it to you because you don't understand the explanation. But you're saying I have some other reason? No, there's no other reason than it's a logistically complicated experiment and there's little hope of a positive result. A meaningful, conclusive result. This is just another case of him rejecting experimental results. Amazing. How is that a case of rejecting an experimental result when you can't do the experiment unless you have a laser that can travel as a pinpoint without any distortion or manipulation, say 500 meters, without diverging? Do you have such a laser? Oh, and I'm not Jack-o'-lantern, so he can respond as well. It doesn't matter, you're all the same jerk. I mean, your rhetoric is indistinguishable. You're just zealots. I mean, you've seen one zealot, seen them all. Alright, so, and then he had some more. A final thing. You know that you on this thing called the internet, right? And that these answers are literally seconds away from you discovering yourself. So again, he just keeps thinking that in spite of the fact that I point out that the Google page doesn't accurately represent the single slit in terms of all the images are completely biased to the bias of the science. And that's, you go on any of these pages and the math, I've shown how the math doesn't have in the two-slit experiment the width of the slit in it. That's actually the math for the single impediment experiment, not the two-slit experiment. I show that the predominance of the videos online, like all of them, don't have the accurate math on them. Even Khan Academy has to redo their own video because they kind of got caught in assumptions that don't work. And you just say, it's seconds, the truth is seconds away. You don't have to filter or glean through anything, it's all the truth. So if you go to the Dr. Quantum video, that's the truth. They really did do an experiment where they turned the cameras off. You know, they unplugged the data cable, and all of a sudden everything changed. Because we weren't looking at the photons anymore, and they knew we weren't looking. And that really happened. See, I mean, it's just amazing. How can you say something like that when there's so much bad information on the internet? I'll go back to this damn lensing, the jack-o'-lantern lensing idiotic article. And again, you're going to defend this as science? And you're going to say this is the stuff people should Google and go to? It's junk. Anyway, discovering yourself. If you were at all interested in learning anything, that is. So again, this preposterous lies. So you go to MIT, Yale, and Stanford, and you watch them all misrepresent, and Richard Feynman, and you watch them all misrepresent single-slit diffraction. And he calls us the people misrepresenting or doing things, if you are at all interested. No answers for those misrepresentations. No excuses beyond, oh, they're just doing generalities because it's more fun. That's science, okay. The fact that you and others are completely oblivious about this stuff, well, yeah, oblivious to what? The proof for converting matter into gravity waves, and the proof for dark matter existing as anything other than crazy glue, as anything other than a bullshit contrivance to gerrymander, to force something that doesn't work to work. a frickin' invisible man crutch, and then act like you're some authority on the matter. When you're the one acting as the authority, quite obviously, and you can't even understand what the arguments are. You can't even get it right that Piro's the one arguing that both velocities are combined. Fuck. Jesus Christ. Alright, discovering for yourself. If you were all interested in anything that is. The fact that you and others are completely oblivious about this stuff and then act like you're the authority on the matter, or that you dispute the results, amazing. Well, the fact that I have pointed out the errors, the mistakes, if you want to call them, of not putting the slit width in the double slit math, like, well, yeah, we forgot to put that in there. I forgot it was an important variable somehow. Somehow the slit width doesn't really have anything to do with Huygens after all. You don't even have to bother with it because, frankly, yes, as long as we have two slits, we can make two photons then, and we can make two waves that interfere with each other. So who needs any of that shit anymore? So, of course, we don't worry about the slit width because this doesn't have anything to do with real theory. But yes, it's awful fucking important with that single slit. Oh, yes, let's pay attention so we can Huygens it. I mean, you're telling me you're honest men. And this is the kind of crap you pull. Alright, are you just a troll and you're here to act stupid and rile people up? Well, that's all you're doing. You're making insane accusations about what I've said that are lies. Apparently just to provoke a response from me. And I wouldn't respond at all in the sense that if it wasn't like, well, there's so many of you. And apparently you're all representing science. So again, you're just proving my point. Your religion only has zealots. This whole stupid edifice of bullshit is that. I mean, Huygens, Heisenberg, bent space, virtual photons, dark matter. This is religion. And you're just demonstrating to me that I should have even more cynicism about all of the talking physics heads. And then maybe they're just all on ego trips. That they just keep hyping this bullshit. And like I said, Professor Lewin sort of demonstrated it when he did basically a silly propaganda speech, about the eclipse. And Eddington's 1919 experiment, which is sort of a huge, which is like Peking Man. It's something science should kind of say, oh, let's bury that for a little while, because that was a little silly. That experiment really didn't deserve New York Times headlines. Not a good enough experiment for a New York Times headline. Anyway, are you just a troll? Okay, here we go. People, that sounds more like it to me, but who knows? Well, I have to draw my conclusions based on the character you demonstrate, and you're not demonstrating any. Oh, and he's got Poe's law strikes again. You know what I'll say is, shitters are shitty shitters. Law strikes again. Shitheads have shit in their heads. Law strikes again. Dumbasses will be dumbasses. Stupid is as stupid fucking goddamn does. There, okay? Yeah, you verify that. Physics is a box of fucking bullshit. Yeah, with a bunch of zealots trying to sell it. Alright. Okay. So, I mean, I could play the bad Michelson-Morley video, but I won't bother with that ever explained. It doesn't demonstrate anything. Alright, so that's the conservation of energy one. I already did that. I've seen videos where you deny it, just a flat earther does. I guess I didn't read this one, so I might as well. Alright, also, why would anyone, I think I already read this, but I don't care, point out any evidence to you for the 20th time? Again, I want the evidence. You'll deny it. Well, anyway, okay, yes, I've already read this one. But yeah, you're just a liar. Quite obviously, I'm not demonstrating to be a liar. Never have I said photons can acquire more velocity or less velocity, ever. Any force. Let's see, bit stupid that comment. Yes, I already did this. Without college, I mean, any amps. There was some other comment here. Oh, the stupid dolphin guy. I have to get rid of him. He's just doing more whining about Tesla. Let's see. Yes. Okay, so this is the other guy. Worse than space plug hole gravity. So yeah, this is the guy with the other thing, so I won't bother with him. I mean, he's conceding that he wasn't very articulate in his first comment. So Jaculator says, yeah, I think the photographs of lensing is strong evidence. So I mean, I sit there and go to the trouble to explain to you, point out to you something quite obvious, that Einstein wouldn't agree with you, factually, that there's no theory for weak gravity creating lensing, no theory at all, that you have to have something like at least 25 meters per second gravity. It's 80 meters per second, 70 whatever, on the surface of the sun. And you have to get some distance from the flaming bullshit. So, but yeah, you need a certain minimum amount of gravity. And for Einstein, it was something around the number, 20 meters per second. The Earth's only got 10, but it's only half as weak, just a little bit bigger Earth, and we maybe could have pulled it off, right, with a planet or something. But most of the planets are just gas balls. They're just not heavy enough on the surface. They're not dense enough to create a surface gravity that's high enough. But that's what you need. And to have gravity that strong, that far away from the gravitational body, would mean that thing would have to have insane pulling potential. It would be sucking huge amounts of stuff, everything around it. And you'd see everything being lensed, everywhere. Because there'd be so much gravity, so deep for so big a huge space, would have so strong a gravity that would be bending light from things at preposterous angles. Just think, if it's strong enough to lens something right in the middle of it, 9 diameters away from the object creating the gravity. 9 diameters, so that's 4. It's not 4 times 9, it's 9 squared times. I mean, it's a big number. And so you can imagine that it could lens stuff at, much further angles away in all kinds of directions. It would be a beacon of light if that gravity was real. Just go look at the simulations for black holes and you'll see that everything is swirling. Well, that's what would be happening in that 9 diameters of empty black space. In that 9 diameters, you would be seeing all kinds of different galaxies at all kinds of different lengths and distance away, having the light diffracted towards us. You have an explanation for how that isn't the truth. And you call that good evidence. Amazing. Pro tip, try Googling tests of general relativity. Yes, we've been there. Want me to go to the page again? I did a video from the page. If the corona was responsible, then different wavelengths, oh, here we are again, would bend different amounts. So you don't understand what scatter is. And that the corona, let's say it's a homogylation of substance. It's not a prism, idiot. It's not a flat surface. The reason why prisms separate light is because of the surfaces. See, again, you think the light gets all fucked up going through the prism. No, it gets fucked up the very second it hits the angle of the surface. The surface diffracts the light. Surfaces diffract light. Newton knew that. Even Huygens knew that. Surfaces diffract light. scatter clouds don't have a surface, so the diffraction wouldn't separate red, blue, and green. It's not going to diffract the light into a prismatic separation. It's going to scatter it. That means it's going to be too random. You won't be able to see any filtering. Shit. Then different wavelengths would bend different amounts. So again, yes, at different angles is the problem. So you won't be able to tell the amount from the angle. See, if the angle is different, then the amount is, you see, you can't, if the two don't, if there isn't something with a coherency to it, then it won't be able to separate. The filter has to have, one of the variables has to be proportionally coherent. Different amounts. So, one way you could disprove GRs to show radio waves hardly bend. So again, he thinks that low frequency things aren't going to be bent enough by scatter because the fact that surfaces bend blue light more than red light. So based on that fact that surfaces bend light a certain way, or rainbows bend light a certain way, therefore, which is a bubble that's doing the bending, a surface, he thinks all diffraction is going to proportionally separate wavelengths, which isn't true. Okay. So another straw man. I'm supposed to argue his false perceptions, his wrong assumptions about how diffraction works. So yes, no, that won't prove anything. It won't happen anyway. The thing you should do is I thought about this today because you think about how the ideal would be if we just put a satellite on the other side of the sun, right? And everybody think, oh shit, no, you can't do that because it's so far away. You go all the way on the other side of the sun. But then I realized, we're over there. We could just leave one over there when we're over there, and then we fly back to the other side, 6 months later, we're really far away. Why haven't they done that? Why haven't they put a satellite on and left it, just shot it and said, you're not coming with us anymore, and just leave it. And then they, when the Earth is doing its ellipse, leave it at the close point, or the far point might be better, but anyway, leave it at one of those points, and then every 6 months we can take a really good look at doing experiments through the sun's atmosphere. Why haven't we done that? Somebody know a reason why? The satellite can just record the results, and then we're back in line of sight. We can just download the results, no problem. What's the problem? I don't get it. Seems a perfectly rational. It seems like NASA should have done that. Like they're NASA scientists. They should have already thought of that. Why the fuck didn't they do it? Anyway. I'd really be curious if somebody has a good reason why that wouldn't have been a sensible thing to do. Just leave a satellite. You just shoot it exactly 27,000 miles, whatever, an hour away from the Earth, and it just goes nowhere. It's like moving on a train going 5,000 miles an hour, and you just shoot a gun, and the bullet just stays right where you shot it. Be a great idea. Just shoot the satellite, leave it behind, and come back later. Visit now and then. Anyway, wow, I knew it. First it was there's no lensing. I don't know where you're going. It's first there's no lensing, always there's no lensing. I've never said there was lensing. Never will say it until I actually see evidence of it, because it just doesn't match the theory. None of the other forces that move the speed of light can be bent by gravity. Why is light special? Now, since he found it, so again, Where did you say I found lensing? Where did I see? Just lie. You're just a compulsive liar then, right? You just can't help yourself. You just can't stop lying. Okay, now since he found it, didn't happen, it's the corona excuse. So now he's saying that I found lensing and I'm blaming on the corona. Well, then it wouldn't be lensing, idiot. So again, just talk some more shit. I still haven't conceded. Look, the Brosey guy, the NASA scientist, says you know, he's seen this diffraction of where stuff should have been. I haven't even seen that, so I'm not even going to make the concession that they've even got that part right. Which has not been explained in scientific terms as to why it would bend exactly the same amount predicted by GR. So you don't understand that how much diffraction there is. Let's see what the right way to say it is. First, I'd be curious to see where you did the math. You know, exactly as much as predicted by GR. Yeah, I'd like to see that. With you know, any lensing experiment that doesn't involve radio waves going through the corona, by the way. I mean, one of the ones where you have an actual star and its position. I'd be curious to see where it actually perfectly matches the 1.2 radians or whatever, arc seconds, yeah, the 1.2 arc seconds versus Newton's 77. I'd like to see where you demonstrate that. So what was I gonna, the point being that, yes, it's a tiny amount of diffraction, so by both things. So you're saying that we have the precision to be able to tell the difference between the two, and I would argue that the tiny amount of difference is so tiny that you're not going to be able to tell the difference between one or the other. Diffraction is diffraction. Diffraction by gravity or diffraction by particles is going to both be subtle as an effect. Extremely subtle. Alright. Or bend at all for that matter. Well, obviously scatter, demonstrating why scatter would bend light is, that's not very hard to prove, so I don't know exactly why you need that explained to you. He'll outright deny it if he has to. So this is, what's the point of this rhetoric? You know, you think it doesn't matter. Okay, you can do gravitational lensing experiments through a field of ionized particles, and you don't think there's any conflict of interest there. No problem. It's a perfectly valid experiment. It's like doing light experiments in fog, and you think that's, yes, that's a valid way to do something. That makes sense. Turn the headlights on in the fog, and they work just fine. No problem. No, they actually don't, retard. So anyway, but if he finds another excuse, he'll use it. Again, I'm asking you to explain why you're so confident based on insanely precise measurements that have to be done on not even objects that are moving, like I said, not video. Okay, you have to take basically a picture of something's position at one time, like at 6 months ago, and you say, okay, this is its position at 10 o'clock, and now let's calculate what its position would be 6 months later at 10 o'clock or whatever the thing is, and then we'll do our eclipse picture, and then we'll figure out how much it's not the same distance. And you're saying, I mean, that's insanely arduous in terms of you have to get your milliseconds right, and you have to do all your calculations correct, and it's really a little bit demanding. It's not a videotape, for certain, where the Hubble could just do a videotape. So let's just understand that's what I'm arguing for. I'm arguing for better evidence. And you're pretending that I'm somehow trying to avoid the subject, when I'm saying, no, let's go find it if it's there. let's do something aggressive to find it. And you're the one saying, no, let's not do that. We got enough evidence. You're the one that seems afraid of asking the question, well, why doesn't the Hubble just do it? Why don't they just put a 13-inch telescope in the International Space Station and a $75 Sony camera and videotape it? Why don't they do that? And you're the one that has no answer to me except, oh, it's already proven, that's why. We couldn't be bothered because we like thinking about insanely preposterous, mathematically impossible lensing images because they're so pretty. And sometimes they look like smiley faces. So yeah, that's proof enough for me. And you think you're coming off like the serious person, the grown-up scientist. Not even close, sorry. I'm sorry, if there's an honest man listening to this video, he knows, yes, they're full of shit because they seem to be just running away from really proving what they say is true. They seem to say, we don't really want hard evidence. We want to keep doing everything in fog. Let's keep looking at things in the sun's corona and then calling it gravity. Alright. If this doesn't show exactly what his mentality is, so again, if this argument he's making doesn't exactly show that this is a zealot, he won't admit that the evidence is far short of what it should be for a conclusion, and that there are ways of getting much better evidence, and that for that to happen, though, people like him have to agree, yes, these are experiments we should be doing. But they're not saying that. They're saying, quite obviously, they're just kind of opposing it, making excuses. The Hubble's a scared. It'd be unfair to force the Hubble to do it, because the Hubble's a scared. I don't know what will. So again, yeah, likewise, if understanding the real context and how these are statements this guy makes are such lies, if you don't understand why this is a zealot, and he's not an honest man, just trying to preserve the truth and protect the truth from horrible cranks like me, when he's the one running from the evidence, running from its weakness, running from the huge rational gaps, and then accusing me of cheating somehow. And again, just lying about what I've said. Alright, another comment by the same asshole. And the deep space lensing photos are so blatantly obvious. Okay, I mean, can you say it any... He's saying it... I made the arguments and they just ignore them, right? So I point out how the mathematics for the Einstein cross and the Einstein ring is exactly the same. So why are the patterns different? Why are they fundamentally representing what's getting lensed fundamentally different? One, perfect round images. The other, swirly, all over the place mush. So one, complete distortion of the image. One, perfect images of the image. Same exact mathematics. You have an explanation? No. Was there ever such a thing as the Einstein cross, by the way? Did Einstein ever propose 4 planets? I mean, four lensed objects? Did Einstein ever do that? Or did they just put Einstein's name on it? I don't remember Einstein talking about lensing that would create 4 objects. Do you have the story of where Einstein did that? Because I don't remember it. I mean, it might have happened. Might be an Einstein thing. But certainly isn't on the article posted by this Jacker Jerky Lantern. He didn't post it. He didn't give me any info. There's no info in the article about how the fuck the math is different for the 2 objects. How there's some special circumstance that makes the Einstein cross thing happens because it's lensing over 14 different items or something. Where's the excuses? And again, the distance from the object. You still don't get this, right? You think you can go a whole diameter away where the gravity is 4 times weaker. No. 16 times weaker. because it's 4 times 4 times weaker. Because it's 2 radiuses. And that's being generous. 16 times weaker gravity than on the surface, and yet nothing in that dark space is getting lensed, even though the gravity is that strong. It's powerful enough to create huge lensed objects very far away, and yet very close, nothing gets lensed. You think that's rational? And now if you're going to say dark matter, then I'm going to say leprechaun to the rescue, right? We'll fix our theory with leprechaun goo. And isn't that all you're doing? And then you're accusing somebody else of having a leprechaun in their theory, when you obviously are completely dependent on invisible things, blaming everything on something invisible. All right, let's see. So I can't believe he said that. And the deep space lensing photos are so blatantly obvious. I can't believe the flaws in them are blatantly obvious. The lack of symmetry is blatantly obvious. The preposterous thickness of the lensed area is blatantly obvious. I have a hard time believing anyone can deny it. Amazing. I have a hard time accepting that the field of astronomy is full of so many people so distracted by playing their little silly games that they can't stand up and say, whoa, we got a lot of dirty crap in our science. We have a lot of shit, talking going on. And we got to be honest about what's going on here. That this information, that this evidence we have, it's telling very different stories. And they don't fit. They don't fit Newton. They don't fit Einstein. They really don't fit anything. It just isn't quite right. And we got to find out why. And instead of doing that, you just invent dark matter glue. And there have been a couple of astronomers who've said, yeah, it's the science has gone off the rails because they don't have, there's no evidence for any of this crap. This glue they're using. No evidence whatsoever. It's just glue. Let's fix it with glue. Let's not make it right. Alright, you can see the galaxies and the stars being warped with your naked eye. No, I think I can see real stuff that's been in a ring pattern because something blew up and pushed it out. I can see that with my naked eye. And the fact that that's